Hello and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today with Rubrik. So the webinar is going to be focusing on Rubrik Accelerator for Microsoft Azure today. And we're pleased to be joined by James Connolly, who works in Cloud Alliances team at Rubrik. And then we've got Matt Compton here as well, who's our Head of Data Management at Bytes.
Thanks, Amy. So as Amy said, my name is Matt Compton. I look after the data management team here at Bytes, and that incorporates anything in terms of protecting and making your data available through things like backup, disaster recovery, archiving, e-discovery. And Rubrik is a vendor that Bytes began partnership with last year. Bytes as a business are hugely focused on cloud growth and cloud adoption, and we're always looking for new and exciting vendors that come to the market with something a bit different and a bit niche and game-changing in terms of the way that they do stuff. And Rubrik is one of those vendors that, as I said, this conversation started having around a year or so, and we've seen some real good growth and uptake within our customer base. And also in the wider market around that, and really helping customers simplify their estates and really leverage the likes of AWS, Azure, and other cloud vendors, which really plays into Bytes' sweet spot. So I'm going to hand over to James, but I'll be back on the end around the Q&A side of things if there's anything that is geared more towards a Bytes-led question. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. So good morning, everyone. As the guys have just alluded to, my name is James Connolly. I look after the relationship between Rubrik and our Cloud Alliance partners. I'm just going to load up my slides. Bear with me 1 second. Hopefully everyone can see this. So the plan for today was for me I'm going to run through a little bit of an introduction into Rubrik, what we do, how we do it, and then I'll discuss some of our specific go-to-markets with our cloud partners, and how we're driving adoption and helping organizations migrate and move workloads to the cloud. So in terms of Rubrik and why we were created, so I imagine this sort of architecture is familiar to many of you. So if we take it from left to right, this is a traditional, what I would call data protection environment today. So you have some backup software, vendors such as Commvault, Veritas, Veeam, etc., sitting on some server hardware. As it scales out, there's proxies to aid that scale. Often it's replicated on different environments. There's then often a separate database where they're indexing data and understanding where the data lives. And then they start around about 2000, some products came to market such as something called Data Domain, which was doing a bit of deduplication and archiving data to a cheaper backup storage tier. And then still a lot of organizations today are archiving that data onto tape libraries, and then for long-term retention, they're pushing it off to an Iron Mountain or another contract like that. So when we think about that, it's a very archaic architecture in terms of how organizations are looking at data centers today. So Rubrik was created to assist in modernizing this environment. Now, when we look at organizations, what are they trying to do? So most organizations are trying to adopt cloud. They're trying to think about how they can get the economics of cloud, how they can get the best use of cloud, and how they can start to modernize their environments. They're also looking to, IT budgets, as we all know, tend to be flat or slightly declining, but yet the expectations of users is for better services, more services, etc. And a way that organizations are often addressing this challenge is looking at simplification and automation of tasks to reduce that cost. And then finally, top of mind for organizations is security. We all know that ransomware is rife out there. Everyone's being targeted, everyone's being attacked. And obviously organizations are spending lots of money in terms of how they can protect their environments. So, security is top of mind for CIOs and organizations. So when we look at this traditional architecture, it doesn't really fit any of those IT strategies that organizations are trying to address. So Rubrik was created to basically simplify this entire ecosystem. So what we do is we converge all of those different architectural layers down to a single software fabric that can sit on either our appliances, commodity approved hardware, or actually in cloud environments as well. So, and a bit similar to technologies such as Nutanix, where we've hyper-converged and sort of collapsed all of these different architectural layers into a platform that then scales and grow with you as an organization as you grow. So if we dive into it in a bit more detail, how do we do this? So the first thing to be very clear about is the fact that simplification is absolutely the heart of what we do. So again, thinking back to that previous environment, there's lots of different silos of technology, there's lots of different integration points. And what Rubrik does is we simplify all of that. And literally, our technology is more or less plug and play. So when we were implementing those previous data protection environments, it would be 30, 40-day scopes of works to implement all of the different layers, integrate it all together. Whereas with Rubrik, literally we drop our platform in, give it an IP address, and we're up and running within 30 to 60 minutes. And then we automatically discover what's out there in your environment. And then again, historically, organizations, your schedule backup jobs, your backup admins will look at those backup jobs every day to see whether there's greens, reds, etc. We move away from that environment. We are all around focusing and setting up what we call an SLA policy. So with an SLA policy, instead of scheduling a backup job to say, right, this workload we're going to back up every day at 8 p.m. and we're going to tear that data off to XYZ location, we basically set a policy to say, right, this is a bronze, silver, gold application workload, therefore we're going to back it up every 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is, and then Rubrik will find the optimum time to do that backup during that SLA window. So if a server or if a workload is busy, we won't try and back it up at that point. We will try again a few seconds later, a few minutes later, and find the optimum point to do that backup in that SLA environment. So, backing up is all well and good, but it's the ability to recover workloads which is more important. So we have something called Live Mount, and what this is it's our ability to take a backed up workload environment, mount it onto Rubrik, and have it back up and running within minutes or seconds. So an example I like to use here is a bank that we work with over in the US. They had a tier 1 SQL database that, using their legacy tools to get that back up and running in the event of failure, would take them 14 hours. With Rubrik, they've now reduced that to 12 minutes. So it's that ability to get data back up and running, workloads back up and running very quickly in the event of failure. So our Live Mount capability supports obviously VMs, SQL, and Oracle databases. As we've alluded to, we are built for the cloud. So we are not a storage provider. The quicker we can move data from our platform and move it off to cheaper storage tiers or to public cloud environments, the better for us. The other thing we have the ability to do is search across the different cloud environments, the different storage environments, and we use a sort of web GUI, a Google-like search page, where we can literally just type file names or database names and just find those exact files. And then we have the ability to just bring back at that file level. So instead of having to mount a full VM and find data within that VM, we can literally pull back to a file level. And then we talked about security earlier. So some key aspects around our platform in terms of security. So, and I'll just build this out. So we provide encryption end-to-end, so that's both in transit and at rest. And then over the past sort of couple of years, we've been focusing more and more on our security posture and how we can help organizations fight things like ransomware. And I'll talk about it a little bit later in more detail, but we've developed an overarching application on the top called Radar, which looks for anomalies in backup behavior, so we can look to spot ransomware before it takes hold. And then the other thing to point out is our file structure is native to Rubrik, and it's immutable to ransomware. So once we have backed up data, it's locked and it cannot be touched. As well, just one other thing to point out, we do a full backup at the beginning when we first install, and then it's incrementals forever thereafter. So therefore, we're reducing the bandwidth, egress charges if we're using public cloud technology. So in terms of the public cloud vendors, so one of the good things with Rubrik as well is our ability to help organizations in a multi-cloud environment. So we can obviously push data into different Azure regions. We can back up between Azure regions, and to take this a step further, we can also obviously work with other cloud providers. So as an example, you could have an Azure instance running, and we could back that up into AWS as an EC2 instance if that's something that an organization is looking to do around that multi-cloud environment. And again, because we're a cloud data management company, we have the ability to search and find data and view data across any of these different environments. So I briefly touched on it earlier. So we have different offerings and different flavors of Rubrik, how it can be run. So the most common instance at the moment is running on our specific turnkey appliances, but we do have the option to run on certain certified third-party hardware from some of the main sort of server manufacturers. That's obviously great for these organizations who have big buying power with these companies and have some good discount levels, etc. We then have the ability to run virtualized instances for remote offices, and then finally for cloud native organizations or organizations that are running lots of workloads in the cloud, we have the ability for a virtualized Rubrik instance within those cloud providers. We now have a very strong portfolio around what we can protect. So I would say probably 99% of tier 1 applications we have the ability to protect. So the latest sort of applications that came into our latest software release about 6 months ago were things like Office 365, SAP HANA. These were all sort of workloads that organizations have been shouting that they needed that we've now baked into our platform. One thing I haven't mentioned is the fact that as a relatively modern organization, we've been in the market now for about 5 or 6 years, shipping software for 5 years. We are built on a complete open RESTful API. So what that means for organizations is we can integrate and automate into lots of different environments. And we actually have a team of what we call rangers who work with organizations to develop scripting, to develop integrations into some of organizations' applications and platforms. So one of our most popular ones is ServiceNow, so our ability to automate provisioning within ServiceNow via the Rubrik platform. So what I've sort of touched upon to this point is very much what I would call our traditional data protection environment. And then now what I'm going to quickly touch on is where Rubrik are going as an organization, which for me brings us into this true cloud data management environment. So if I build this out, so over the last 12 months, Rubrik have come to market with an overarching platform over the top of our traditional software called Polaris. And what this is a Rubrik SaaS platform where we are building software modules on top of Rubrik for organizations to get more value from the data that they have. So if you think about this, Rubrik are in a fortunate position that we obviously tag all of the data passing through Rubrik with metadata. So think of us as a bit of a metadata library. So we have good knowledge of all of the information, all of the data that's being stored. And now Polaris is all around what value can we derive for organizations from that. So the first module we brought out was something called GPS, which is a global management platform. And what that does is that just gives visibility, and I hate using the term because it's a frequently used term, but a single pane of glass view and visibility of the data footprint, where it is in the different cloud environments or on-prem, etc. The second module we brought out was Radar. Now, I alluded to it earlier, this is our ability to look at anomalies in behavior around the backup environment. So when we think about ransomware, ransomware is obviously getting cleverer and cleverer, and historically, ransomware would target a production environment, try and infect it, and then the organization, it would cause them some pain, but then they would go to their backup environment, eventually rehydrate all of their backups into their production and get back up and running in a period of multiple hours, days, etc. But now ransomware is obviously more intelligent, and what we've seen numerous times is a ransomware going to attack the backup environment first, obviously infect all of those backups, and then move into production. So then from an IT perspective, they go to their backup environment to try and restore, and lo and behold, it's been infected, and then they're in a whole world of pain. So what Rubrik do is we look for anomalies in behavior, and then we have the ability to restore from one click from a point in time very quickly for organizations. So we have multiple organizations using this platform now, and it gives them the ability to recover from ransomware in minutes and hours as opposed to days and weeks. So it's a very powerful application. We've actually won numerous awards at VMworld around it, even though we're not really a security company. You know, these are some of the things we're looking at to get value for organizations. The other modules listed up there, these are things coming down the line. The next one we're going to be releasing, which is imminent, is a information governance module. So what this is looking at is things like GDPR, HIPAA compliance, etc. So again, we're not saying we're going to be your only platform around data governance, but what we're saying is you've invested in Rubrik, let's try and find some value from the data we know about to give you more control. So with this, we can do things like look for specific words, specific things in data that we can then surface to say, look, this could be a breach of governance. So just to give a quick example of the ransomware module. So again, we detect the behavior, we look at what's changed, and then we can restore very quickly. ASL, French airline, you know, they're a massive advocate of this technology, and they've obviously are trying to be targeted by these ransomware providers on a regular basis, and this has given them comfort in the ability to recover very quickly. So then if we look at, you know, our sales plays and how we work with Microsoft. So the first and most obvious use case with Microsoft, and you know, this is also across the other cloud providers as well, is, you know, using those public cloud environments as an archive target. So instead of backing up to on-premise tiers of storage and then to tapes, you know, you would keep data with Rubrik for say a week, and then would push it into the public cloud environment. So that is very much often a first use case for organizations as they start their cloud journeys. They just start using it as a long-term store. And then we have the ability to take those blob store images and then we can basically rehydrate them in the public cloud platform for things like DR, test and dev, etc. So what we do is we convert an Azure blob image, rehydrate it into a VHD, and then, you know, have that as a workload running in Azure for organizations to use. So typically we see that as a next step on a client journey. So they have a plan to go to cloud, they start with archive data, they then start looking at some other use cases such as DR, and then as they get more comfortable with leveraging public cloud and they start to want to move different workloads and different platforms, then they can use Rubrik as a workload migration tool. So we can do that physical move of data where we would take an on-prem instance, back it up into Rubrik, push it across into the cloud, spin it up in the cloud, and then have it working as a workload in the cloud. We talked about Office 365 earlier, so our ability to protect Office 365, and what we actually do is we actually protect that and back it up into Azure. So, you know, a lot of organizations aren't close enough to understanding actually what Microsoft offer around their 365 tenancy. So typically your data is only protected in there for up to 30 days unless you take some additional services from Microsoft. So, you know, we offer the ability to keep data and keep a backup copy of that data for however long you guys decide. We all know that Microsoft are coming to the end of support for SQL 2008, Windows Server 2008. So very cleverly, from a Microsoft perspective, they've offered the carrot that if organizations move those legacy environments into versions within Azure, then you can have your extended support for 2 or 3 years on the back of it. So again, Rubrik can help organizations with that migration from those on-prem legacy environments into VMs within Azure. And then finally, if organizations are using NoSQL instances like some MongoDB, Cassandra, DataStax, etc., we have the ability to protect those also in Azure as well. So if we step through this in a bit more detail, this is obviously that ability to just push data out into the cloud. We have a license for this called Cloud Out. So our Cloud Out licensing gives the organization the ability to push that data into Azure or AWS or GCP. On top of that, once we then want to rehydrate those images in the cloud environments, that's a license called Cloud On. So that's the ability to take a blob image, rehydrate it into that cloud platform. If we then talk around the SQL and Windows Server migrations, as I talked about, the first opportunity is that ability to move the legacy environment into Azure as a VM running on 2008. The other way we can help organizations is actually by doing an on-prem upgrade. So again, we just provide that comfort and protection that during that process, we've obviously protected the data and have it backed up. I've talked briefly around Office 365 and that ability to protect that data and then run it in Azure. And then finally, one of the key things that we've done recently in conjunction with Microsoft, and one of the things we wanted to talk about today, is our offering called RAMA. Now, this stands for Rubrik Accelerator for Microsoft Azure. So this is a platform that we have developed in conjunction with the Azure Business Group within Microsoft. It is a Rubrik platform, a Rubrik appliance that has an Azure logo on it, etc. And the key thing with this platform is it's locked to work with Microsoft Azure only. So as part of this offering, together with Microsoft, we've obviously put together some commercial benefits around it. So as part of the package, Rubrik are offering Cloud On, which is that ability to push data and then spin it up in the Azure environment for 12 months. And then Microsoft have put together a credit package of up to, I think, $12,000, $15,000 worth of Azure credits to get organizations moving into their environment. And then I just wanted to finish with a recent win story that we worked with Microsoft on. So this is Cranfield University. The key thing to point out here is they were leveraging a secondary DR facility that was costing them quite a lot of money and was never really being used. It was only ever used in those instances where the primary DC was down. So it was coming up for renewal, etc. And they made the decision that if they leverage Rubrik and Microsoft Azure, they didn't need to keep that secondary data center. They could move all of their DR facility into Azure, so they just spin it up as and when they need it. The other key thing for these guys was that total cost of ownership. So again, if we think right back to the beginning and those multiple different layers of architecture that organizations typically have today, Rubrik's key USP is around our ability to save organizations money. Collapsing all of those 7 layers down to about 1 or 2 layers, we will see anything from a 30 to 70% TCO savings for organizations. So in this instance, these guys were saving around 50% compared to their traditional environment. We've got lots of other instances. There's another organisation I work with. They procured Rubrik, and actually the Rubrik cost was 70% of what they're actually just spending on their offsite tape costs alone. So you can just see our ability to save organisations money whilst cutting complexity and simplifying the environment as well. So in terms of a summary, we have a heritage in what I would call data protection, backup and recovery. But as we move forward with Polaris and our overarching platform over the top, we're very much moving into that cloud data management sphere and giving organizations more value from the data that we're protecting. We are a cloud first open API organization. So we're built to enable organizations to move at their own pace and to work in a hybrid environment. Often I'm asked by organizations, Microsoft, AWS, well, why would we not use the native cloud tools? If you are an organization that are purely in that public cloud environment, then absolutely leverage those tools. But the majority of organizations we work with tend to be in that true hybrid environment where they will always have a mix of on-prem and cloud workloads, and that's very much where we fit in that true hybrid environment. And then our ability to complement your traditional security posture and enable you to recover quickly in the event of security breaches and security challenges. So with that, that's all I wanted to cover today. I think we've spent about 25 minutes going through that. Very much as a follow-up, Rubrik would love to give the offer to obviously come and do any demos to show the simplicity of the platform, and also deep dive sort of whiteboard sessions to map out how your environment looks today, how Rubrik could potentially look to supplement, replace that, and the sorts of savings we think we could provide you as part of that. So Matt, with that, I'll hand back to yourself.
Thanks, James. Amy here. Thanks for presenting. That's brilliant. And I'm just going to pass back to my screen really quickly. So as mentioned at the beginning, we will open it up to any questions now. So if you do have any questions, there is a questions box on the right-hand side of your screen on the control panel. If you just type those in there, I'll read those out. So I'll see if any have come through. So there's one here that says, what support do you have for backing up workloads to and in AWS?
Yeah, so AWS are a key partner of ours. So our relationship with AWS is the same as Microsoft. So we have the ability to push data into an S3 storage tier, and then we can rehydrate that as EC2 instances. And we're actually probably further developed with AWS. So from the Rubrik platform, we can also provide native protection of EC2 instances. So we can fit them into our SLA Policy engine and provide protection within those EC2 instances. So very much AWS are an absolute key strategic partner for ourselves.
Thanks, James. So another question here, it says, my company on-prem environment mostly runs on Microsoft technologies. What are the advantages of using Rubrik over ASR for DR?
That's a good question. And what I'm going to say to that is we actually have a document that we've put together in conjunction with Microsoft to talk through how we not compete, but how we differentiate against those native tools. So instead of me sort of coming up with bullet points, what I'll do is I will share that document post this session. So if you can just, Amy, get me the name of the individual and I'll follow up and share that document.
Yes, definitely, will do. So we'll just wait a couple more seconds, see if any more questions come through. As mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, if you are interested in a demo or technical deep dive session, then please do pop that in the feedback form. And I'll be sending the recording as well later today or tomorrow for you all. Okay, any more questions, or is that it for today? Someone's just said hello. Oh, here we go. Is there any electronic information pack on Rubrik? Can we send over some details? Yep, so we can send that over to you. Another question here, can you protect NetApp SVM file shares?
Well, that's one I'll have to take away. SVM file shares.
Okay, yep, so Martin, we can get back to you on that one. We'll take that offline. So I think it looks like that's all the questions that we've had for today. So thanks everyone for joining, taking the time out of your day to join the webinar today. I hope you found it valuable. And sorry, we just had another question come through. Sorry, James. This question says, do you have instant VM recovery on cloud?
Yes. So, I mean, instant is obviously, you could construe that in lots of different ways. But yeah, we have a very quick recovery of VMs in cloud. And again, that's something we can demo in a follow-up quite easily.
Brilliant. Yeah, so if you are interested in having a demo of that, please do let us know in the feedback form and we'll be in touch. Okay, so yeah, so thanks everyone for joining, and James, thank you so much for presenting the webinar today.
No
I will be sending the slides to you all, and please do share any feedback with us on the feedback form. We really appreciate that. Okay, thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your days today. Thank you.